I'm going to show you how to paint two snow scenes today, one close up and the other one a landscape. Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm taking advantage of the winter weather and painting snow today. Conditions can change quickly, so you need to be sure of what you want to paint before you start. This lovely cottage with snow on the roof and smoke coming out the chimney is a good starting point for a demonstration. At present, the sky is creamy, but as the snow melts, it can change to blue, so it's always good to have a reference. Mobile phone footage can be very useful because it reminds you after the snow's melted of what inspired you to consider painting the picture. I'm painting the stonework on the cottage first, because when you've got snow that's brilliant white, you need another colour to judge it against. So to put the stonework in first will give an indication of how bright the snow is. I'm deliberately making the sky out of a different grey. I've got ultramarine, azilian crimson and yellow ochre, and I'll mix them together to make a grey, and it will be different from the stone colour that I've already put in. I want to separate the two. I've got smoke coming out the chimney, so I want to leave a space for that. So what I'm going to do is just with my watery brush, just go round the smoke. And then that will separate it from the sky. I'm going to add a little bit of blue, more blue to the sky, just because I can. I don't want it to look a grey day. And I'm going from left to right, just all horizontal strokes. It's to be quite bold for the white to show up against it. I'll just use some blue just to drop in. It's all still wet, so I can drop it in. We need a focal point, so I'll change colour for the focal point and just use some warm grey, which will hopefully make this smoke from the chimney show a little bit more. It's going to have to dry. While it's drying, I can just make sure that I've feathered it down amongst the twigs, because the twigs are going to be quite dark. That looks okay. And the next thing I can put in are the bushes. Now the bushes are dark at the bottom but white at the top with the snow on them, so I've got to sort of do it a bit like a zebra crossing. Put some paint on, leave it, put some paint on, leave it for the branches. So I'm going to mix up a nice dark green. I've just mixed up chrome yellow and ultramarine quite thickly to make a dark green. And now I've got to work out my pattern of the branches. The snow will follow the shape of the branch. A palm will still look like a palm and a conifer will still look like a conifer. You've just got to look before you start and make sure that you've copied the shape of the tree. I'm starting with the bottom of the hedge with very dark and going upwards because the snow's on the lawn. And there's a few odd branches. This is all being done with a size 8 brush at the moment, but you could use anything that you're comfortable with. Then going to the slightly lighter green, not touching anywhere twice at the moment, just going once. It will look broken because it's got snow in certain places. Then I'm moving up towards trees here, which I need to do different brush strokes to indicate them. It's something prickly like a holly, and it's got swirly bits of green showing and bits of white, so I'm just going in with the same brush but making a different pattern. You see the green at the bottom and the snow at the top. Trees that are further away, I'm using a rigger and more brown. draw things or paint things the way they grow. So the tree's going up thick to thin, going into the sky that I did a few minutes ago. And I'm just making a dark brown with some Payne's grey and any brown I happen to get hold of. You can add blue to make it darker as well. If you want the branches to recess further onto the hillside, then you need to make them more blue, but have slightly warmer ones nearer to me, just to show the distance. You can vary it by putting 2 or 3 different browns in, leaving some space to indicate snow behind it. It's got to look like trees, not grass, so you need a few sideways branches. Just try and put a few broken strokes in. Let it look more authentic. There's a tree that's much nearer, so there's hints of the odd leaf that's still left. Just indicate a few different angles to show that there's little twigs or the odd leaf or whatever you can find. And we can only do this because the sky is dry. And it's broken because we want to see the house behind. And I want to bring this down to the hedge. And even though I haven't done anything, the smoke is showing a little bit. So I'm just going to let that dry a moment and then I'll show you how to do the snow on the roof. It's not all the snow is covering. There's a little bit of dark with the attic roof light. All this will make the snow look much brighter. And the stone chimney area, it's got some nice stones on the end that make it look a bit brighter, more dominant, or the same with here. There's a dark line under the roof. Just put it in and then highlight the local stone again. This is all making anybody looking at it focus on the white snow. The other colours are leading you in. Then I'm just going to get a brush with just water on, just move that around a little bit. Dry much softer. So now I can move on to the trees behind, which are wet wood, which is very, very dark brown. I've got various browns here, warm and cold browns. I'm just mixing them together. I want it quite strong. And that again will give emphasis to the chimney and the white roof. Now the smoke is getting a little bit lost as it appears over the trees, but I could fix that if I need to, or I can just leave it. Sometimes you need to leave things for somebody's brain to conjure up. You don't have to give it to them all on a plate. And I'll go round the other side of the chimney. And the smoke isn't going straight up, it's going all around and about. We're using the side of the rigger just to show some trees. That's instantly looking more like a roof and more like a house. You want to try and make it look realistic and not like a cartoon. So having done that, I will now move to the right hand side of the picture and do some more trees. The trees in the very background are still covered slightly in snow, but they're more distant, so I'm going to change brushes. I'm going to use the side of a medium brush, which I think is number 4. Just gently go in, then go back to the rigger with some darker paint and just feather through it to give a ragged skyline as you get in winter. Doesn't matter if I pull some of the wet paint up, just a question of giving the suggestion of trees on the hillside. Slightly sideways underneath, so implying that the top has got snow on. Now, even if you've done this a couple of times, you could still apply some latex over the paint and go a little bit more if you want to, if you feel that it will give it more sincerity. We've also got colour changes, so it gives more distance. That looks more distant now because this is looking closer. The house is still warm, so it's a focal point. So I'll just let that dry, and then I'll put some latex on and show you how the next bush can be done with latex to show the snow on the top. I'm putting latex on with a brush that's not too precious, and what I'm going to do is just lay it on top of the hedge. Do sideways strokes that it would just fall evenly, and some of it would fall around these branches. Now, it might not be apparent to the camera while I'm putting it on, but it does come in cream or slightly blue or slightly clear, so you just have to trust me on this one. I'll zoom in and try and get a bit more. And then where some things are laying down, there's a few little bits, and there's a slight hint of snow on some trees, little miniature apple trees here, so I can put that in. And in the foliage here, there's quite a lot. So I just put it on, and if it's too much, you can touch in around it. It gives you a starting point. I'll go on top of the chimneys a little bit. And then the best bit is this bush, because I can just go around with the contours of the bush where the snow has landed. And it's lipping up from the lawn. So as I've got a whole jar of latex, I can lip it up. I'm not short of it today. There's not much snow further down because the bush is protecting itself. It's more at the top. So what I'll do is just go gently on the top of the branches, leaving the bottoms. You don't always have to use latex first. You can use it in between layers to give more of a dominant result. And there's quite a bit round the edge of this chimney. It's quite thick there, it's blown on it, so I can put some more. And then some of the twigs here have got some on, so I'll do some twig shapes. I'm not going to do any more till it's dried. Anything else can be done later, but I think That's probably enough for the moment. To emphasise the snow in the fields, I've made the area surrounding it much darker, which I've given a wash of brown and Payne's grey. You can use any brown. If it's too warm, just add a little bit of blue and it'll knock it back a bit. Also, I have gone over the holly bush again, which has got very dark areas and then the snow sitting on top of some of the leaves. But because holly leaves are so curly, it hasn't really settled in a pattern, where the hedge is more uniform and the roof, and so there's a better line of snow, and the grass here just got wisps of things coming up. The smoke wasn't showing very much, so I've darkened the sky a little bit. You can always go over areas to balance one against the other. Now, to do the hedge and the leaves, I've used 3 brushes. I've used a rigger, a fan brush, and a flat brush. Now, the flat brush, you needn't use it flat, you can use it on one side, it works quite well. The fan brush seems to have developed a life of its own, but it's very good for squiggly bits, and the rigger enables you to hold more paint so you can take things further. I'm now going to work on an area of open fields to show you how to do a bigger area of snow, having warmed up on this one. So having had a practice painting the cottage in the snow, I'm now moving on to some fields full of sheep. Now the snow has melted here, but with the practice that we've just done painting the cottage, it's easy to add snow. Just watch and see. I'm also adding some bales for the sheep to feed on and some nearer sheep from references that I happen to have at home. It's always good to mix and match. Now to turn this into a snowy picture, I'm going to start with the sky. And I'm putting some water on at the bottom, only at the bottom, because the paint has to go through the bare branches of the trees and they are going to be quite dark. But I don't want the sky to be white because the snow is white. So I'm going to make a winter grey sky with Payne's grey. I haven't cleaned my palette because this is a follow-on from the cottage that I did, and I want some of the similar colours. I'm just going to add a little bit of crimson. When it's going to snow, sometimes the sky can look quite purpley, with a few clouds. So I'm going to do the clouds at an angle. Go this way again. It might look strange, but it will all become apparent in a minute. And then do some more behind the trees. Now these will be emphasised by the very dark brown twigs of the trees. So I'm just going to pop it in. I'm just making a wobbly line so that it looks more natural as a cloud. I've left some in the middle as a focal point. On a winter's day, you always need a focal point. There could be a hint of sun coming through. So that's Naples yellow. And I'm just going to bleed it out a little bit. And pop a bit more in the middle. That'll find its own way. Now anything that's a hard edge here, I'm just going to bleed out a little because it'll look more natural. Can always add a little bit more. I just want the odd streak through the trees. So I'm going to let that dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to start at the top of the hill, and the snow won't be all the way under these trees because some of them are evergreens. So there will be a mixture of fallen leaves mud. So I'm just going to lay some paint down. This is something with leaves on, so there won't be snow underneath it. And then feather it out a little bit. And where there isn't quite snow, we can add some green. And all this will make where there is snow look brighter. My usual trick, giving it a lost edge. And I'll go back the other way again, just to let it down. Now there's lots of sheep here, and the easiest thing to do with them when I'm going to do lots of snow is to put some latex on, but I'll do that shortly. I can see that some bits are drying a bit straight, so I'm just going to give it a wiggle. And then we've got a stream with some water in, so I'm going to take a smaller brush. And the water will reflect the sky colour, it will be cold. So I'm just going to put some grey in there. Could always change it in a minute, but that will make a start. We don't want the water lost as it goes down to the lake. The lake is down here. So we put that in, and then the space is reserved. Now the sheep need to be warm, like the blob in the sky. I want to balance the front and the back of the picture. So I'm going to put the sheep in. They're not pure white, they are off-white. So the next thing to do is to put the sheep in and put some latex on the ones further in the distance so I can concentrate on the snow. When you're using latex, the best thing is a brush that's not too expensive, and wash it out with water immediately. Now I'm just going to put little shapes on here because the sheep are so far away they will be just a shape. Any fine detail can be put in afterwards. Just a little blob. These sheep don't need doing. I can do those naturally because I don't need such a wide sweep of snow, but this needs a good sweep to show it up. Just little blobs. They're not really apparent at the moment, but they will be later. Then say the answer is to go and wash the brush immediately. The sheep are eating from a bale of hay, which I found in the summer, so I've got a reference, but it would have been stored for a while, so it wouldn't be so bright as it was in the summer, but it's spiralled by a machine. So let's put the spiral in. And then to stop it rolling away, it's in a cage which I can put on when it's dry, but I'm just going to make the side a little bit brighter than the top. That looks perfectly okay. Now the sheep, I'm going to start with Naples yellow, and anywhere that's particularly bold I will put in with a different yellow, like yellow ochre. Just start gently. Now these sheep aren't necessarily going to be clean, they've been in the field, so I'll add a little bit of grey. And I'm just doing random dabs because it is a woolly coat. And shorter wool around the face. If you've got too much in one area, you can pick it up and move it, but I don't want them to look grey. The whole point of my picture is that they look a bit yellowy. So that's one as a start. Then I'll do another one over here. I'll do them at random. probably need a couple of coats of paint to bring out the three-dimensional curly wall. Sometimes you need to leave your palette and you can use it. You don't always want to clean it if you're doing similar pictures or you want useful colours. It's a bit of a waste. I often work on alternate animals. You don't necessarily want them to be a whole row. It's more random if you move about a little bit. So that's 3 started. It gives you the idea. Now I'll just get hardly any paint on the brush and go through, put the face on. I'll do some more in a minute. I don't want to smudge it, but it's giving harmony to the back and the front. So the next thing to do now, when the sky's dry, is to put in the fields in the background. There are ancient hedges. This farmland has been farmed for 500 or 600 years. So it's all well established, and that's why they're lovely trees. You know, that they weren't planted 2 years ago. These have been here for a long time. And not all the hedges will be covered in snow. It'll be just gentle lines. And some of these hedges are very old, so they're very wide. Just a question of marking out the hillside as to what's there and what is just trees without any leaves. So I'll just put a bit of a hedge in here. There's nothing too definite here, just gently doing it. Now I'm going to get some very, very dark brown, which I'm making with Payne's Grey and raw umber. You can make it with any brown. Just make a very dark mix. And it might dry a bit lighter, so I'm going to go in even darker. And then just follow the shapes of the trees. Where to start? I'll start here. And it's just going up the trunk with a rigger. And I'm just going to dab the brush a little bit, not put so much on, to just fan it out for the shape of the tree. And I always draw things the way they grow. It's going up, and it's got a definite V there. Just put that in. And then in the background they are less dominant because they're further away and they're a different type of tree. So I'm just going again. I'm going to try sideways here to get a straight line. And then wet the brush again. You can actually lift the paint that's already there. Just random shapes that show that there are trees a long, long way away. They actually do continue. So a bit of dark to show that the bottoms. That's giving some distance between the trees and the sheep now. So I'm going to keep the picture even by moving across to the right hand side slightly. So I'll take some more hedge colour. The hedges are all very old. So we can put some wiggles on them with a different green, darker green, just to show that it wasn't planted yesterday, but it's a well developed part of the countryside. And it might look a bit dark when the snow gives a contrast, but look different. So they're not always the same tree in a hedge. So I'm going to add some yellow just to break it up a little bit. So it's looking more random and natural. I can do the same with these. And a bit of yellow and a bit of brown. Just give a wiggle. Wiggle goes a long way. And then some yellow. Yellow just breaks it up nicely. Makes it go less regimented. That's enough for now, so we'll go back to the trees. These go up from the lake, so I'm going to put the trunks in first, which are quite wiggly, and these fan out. And parkland is this old, you don't know whether it was planted deliberately or whether these are self-seeded, but they're an interesting fan shape there. There's about 6 of them. And what they've got is lots of wiggly branches going out. You have to build this up gently, you won't get it in one go. But really, a lot of it is lost, and you just see the trunks. And they go all the way up to the skyline here. Quite dark against the sky, so I'm going to add more Payne's grey for the other ones. This one's, I don't know whether it's more sheltered or more exposed, but it's got a different shape. What we'll do is take the side of the brush, just fill in some of the gaps. Churned it up a little bit, suggestion of a path. So I can do that, make it a little bit muddy. It will be a little bit muddy and churned up where they're standing. Just a tiny bit dirty snow. And that make the other snow look more pristine. The whitest bit is the page. Tint some of the other bits. And I want the viewer to look straight in, so having it coming down is okay. And again, we can have a little bit of green around the lake to show that perhaps the snow has melted there. It won't be as green as a summer lawn, but just a little bit. And to bring the viewer's eyes in again, we're doing sideways strokes. I have added a little bit of turquoise paint to the top of the sky to give a contrast with the weak sun, which bounces off the sheep. Now the sheep are a little dirty. Before the snow came, they would have been in perhaps muddy conditions, so they don't look like they've just come out the bath. There's a few long grasses growing through the snow, and the water coming through the stream as the animals obviously go there to drink. The snow's melted a little bit. Now the hills behind don't really need anything except the hedges. That's bare paper. And to make it brighter, I have got a number 1 brush and mixed up some very dark brown and some Payne's grey. And what I'm doing is just putting a few little branches in, or suggestion of branches. And because it's very dark, it makes the white paper show through more dominantly. You always want to try in a painting to get some of the extreme darks and the extreme lights butting up against each other, and it gives good visual impact. And what I will do is put the rest of the sheep in, which I started in latex, as a little yellow ochre dot. I've now got the reflections in the snow and a suggestion of the black faces and the white face sheep, and a few more leaves on the trees. And I think I will declare it finished, because sometimes less can be more with a snowy picture. You can over fiddle.